Hey, everybody, I'm Justin Bogar with Bright Path Notes, and this is the April 14th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Be the Bank broadcast. We're going to be talking about retirement accounts today. We got our sponsor, NewView Trust, in the house today, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the mortgage industry update as to what's going on, where we're at from the last month, and it's going to be a good show, so stick around. We'll see you soon. Richard Thornton, how's it going, man?
Pretty good, man. How you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. It's nice to see your mug again, my friend.
It happens. It happens.
What's the temperature like out there in good old San Fran?
You know, it's finally warmed up. It is very nice. I think it's a very nice 70 degrees, and the birdies are chirping. How about that?
Nice. Yeah, the sun has been staying out late for us here in the East Coast. I'm thinking about 8:30 when it finally starts to get dark. It's always so weird. It's like I put my kids to bed around 8 o'clock, and then I still see the light out. It just seems so weird. So they're just like, why am I going to bed? That's light out. I'm like, you know what? That's pretty good.
That's an hour longer than we have. We're pretty much at 7:30 here.
Man, that's crazy. Anyway, we're not talking about the weather and stuff. We're here to talk about note investing, right, Richard?
That's right.
All right. So, Richard, today we got a guest on, Mr. Brian Martinez, and he is from NewView Trust. He's going to be talking a lot about self-directed retirement accounts. I know you and I both have retirement accounts, Richard, and that's kind of where we like to build our legacy and build our wealth. And so I'm really excited to have Brian on. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw Brian on the screen right now. So, hey, Brian, how's it going, man?
Good deal.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. And you are in sunny Florida. Well, I assume it's sunny right now, is it?
Oh, my gosh. It's gorgeous out there. It's about 95 degrees. It's a little brutally hot. Not as humid as it is in the summer, but it's very nice.
We're going to have to cut Brian's feet, I think.
You can have the humidity, Brian. No, thanks.
So, Brian, this is our broadcast. We really appreciate you being a sponsor for our broadcast and look forward to having you talk about self-directed IRAs. And so tell us a little bit about yourself, Brian. How long have you been with NewView Trust?
Yeah, so I've been with NewView Trust for almost 3 years now. This summer will be 3 years I've been with the company, and I started off as an inside sales rep. So I was the one answering all the calls, taking all the numbers, and then walking people through the applications, which you think is the easy part, but that's actually the harder part. But I was able to learn a lot from our president, Jason DeBano. I mean, he's really a great guru. He's taught me so much about self-directed IRAs and building wealth. And I've taken it, I've rolled with it. Now I'm in the senior business development role. I'm an outside sales rep. So I'm, before pandemic times, I was traveling, going to conventions. I'm always at the RIAs, just networking my butt off, making, friends with new people that want to learn how to build wealth.
That's awesome. So are you doing a lot of speaking across the country about the NewView?
Oh, yeah. I mean, everything's virtual right now, so it's great. I don't have to jump on any planes. Conventions are starting to open up slowly. We're starting to notice, but yeah, I do a lot of speaking engagements, podcasts, constantly doing webinars. Love live webinars. Those are the best. Those are my favorite.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Right on. Richard?
Yes.
You got any questions you want to drill Brian with before we get going for today?
Actually, he's going to talk about solo 140Ks and all sorts of stuff like that. So I'm excited to hear what he's got to say.
That's my favorite topic, Brian. I don't know about anybody else, but my ears are going to be perked during that part of the presentation because I feel like I understand it and I really don't. So I'm looking forward to that part of it.
Just wait. It's a lot of information, but the solo 401k is probably one of the most powerful types of retirement accounts that's out there, and hardly anyone knows about this. It's such a great vehicle to, build your wealth, and you can contribute so much money to this plan, but I'm not going to get ahead of myself until we get to that point.
It's especially good for anybody who wants to be in notes because you can contribute a lot of that income on the side and still have a W-2 income if you want. But it's great way to build wealth, and I'll let you you tell everybody about it.
Right on. Well, without further ado, let's kind of get into our intros in here for our broadcast. And let's just make this disclaimer clear for everyone. I know if you've been to our broadcast, you've seen this several times. We're not attorneys, we're not tax consultants, and we're not financial advisors. That goes for all three of us up here. We're just note investors, and Brian is the expert in IRA services and retirement accounts. This broadcast would not be possible without some sponsorship. So we have to give a shout out to some sponsors, okay? BrightPath Notes, that's my company. We provide the deal flow to make your cash flow. So we got a note deals page on our website. Check out brightpathnotes.com/note deals. Our local real estate club is called CIREA, Central Indiana Real Estate Investors Association. And Vicki Perry is our main contact there. If you want to get into the Indiana Midwest area and see some deals from local wholesalers and local people here, be a part of our group. We have our own Facebook page. We have a YouTube channel, and you can definitely get boots on the ground if you need to. Those of you that are out of state and invest in Indy, and there's a lot of wholesalers, a lot of good guys and gals here that know the places in Indy. I don't know them all. I know a few of them, right? So Dickie Baldwin, our good friend at Baldwin Advisory Group, he's our due diligence guy. So we go to him when we need BPOs or property inspections or even some title reports. He does some skip tracing. He's got other things that he does as well. So that's Dickie Baldwin. There's his phone number and there's his email. Reach out to him, Dickie Baldwin. You probably heard of him because he won, if you're in the note community, he had the industry's best BPO company. So shout out to Dickie Baldwin for that. And then last but not least, our newest sponsor, New View Trust. Thanks, Brian, for being a sponsor. The self-directed IRA guru here. There's the company phone number, new accounts at New View IRA. That's NUVIEW IRA.com. If you mention this broadcast, Brian's going to waive the setup fee. So be sure to mention the Be the Bank broadcast, okay? Thanks, Brian, for doing that. So CIREA, we're going to drill down a little bit more specific. Our local RIA has a subgroup, which is called Notes. And if you log into the web page that just popped up on your lower left hand of the screen, the bit.ly CIREA Notes, you can log into your PHP credits for that. Follow CIREA on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And they got a YouTube channel, like I mentioned before. Here is the QR code. If you take your little smartphone out and you wave your camera over the screen, you'll come up with a website and you can log in that way as well. That's CIREA /CIREA Notes at bit.ly. All right. So selfishly, I've got to kind of throw this out there. We got our own podcast, me and my friend Super E. It's called the Two Wealth Show. We're on all the audio podcast directories. We also video cast this as well on our BrightPath Notes YouTube channel. So don't forget to check us out there. Subscribe to it. We just released an episode last week, I believe. Episode number 7. We already recorded 2 more episodes that'll release in another week or 2. Look forward to those interviews. Actually, Jason DeBono was one of our interviews, Brian.
Yeah, Jason's great. I told you he's my guru. How'd the interview go?
We were just like this, on camera going, my God, this guy is good.
That sounds like my first day of work.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that's a good episode. We also recorded for Winston Template. He's got a really inspirational story. That's going to be episode number 9, so don't miss that at all. Today's agenda, it's April 14th. We're going to go over the note basics, the mortgage industry update like we typically do, and then obviously we're going to bring New View Trust into the mix. The note basics is we get a lot of questions to ask us what are you talking about? Why investing in notes, and what is this and how does it work? Don't worry. We got the note basics coming up. We're going to go through a little video presentation of kind of how it works so you can see how the puzzles fit together and really why we do this stuff. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Richard, all right, we got a buyer and a seller in a house, right? So this is how a note gets created. The buyer wants to buy the seller's house. The seller is on the deed. They hold this piece of paper that say, I own the property. All right, so at the title company, they close on this property. The deed gets transferred over to the buyer, and the bank comes into play because, Richard, right, not everybody has a full wad of cash or a sack of cash to pay for a property, so they need to get financing for it. They traditionally go to a bank. A bank creates what's called a note and mortgage. Some states it may be called a deed of trust. So the bank holds the note. They don't really own the house because they have the security of the house if the borrower defaults. Okay. So it's very specific that we want to point out that the bank owns the note, not the house.
Right.
The buyer holds the deed, right? They own the house. They are the borrower now. Fast forward to me and Richard's fast lane here. This is what we thrive in. So we've got our homeowner. They have the deed. We have the bank. They hold the mortgage note on this house. So they have the lien on this house, a first lien, let's say, in this position. And then here comes good old Mr. or Mrs. Investor. This could be an LLC. This could be individual Richard Thornton. This could be New View Trust account, IRA number, blah, blah, blah. Whatever you have that has a lump sum of cash, you can buy or invest in these mortgage notes. And it's really simple. You give cash for that note. So now you take over the debt collection and you are receiving the monthly cash flow. So the homeowner now, instead of paying Bank of America, let's just say, they're going to be paying that investor, whether that's the retirement account, which is what we're going to talk about today, which me and Richard both love that, and or whether it's an LLC or what have you. So this is kind of how the note industry works, how the note is created, and how the note is purchased and why it's purchased.
So we're going to tell people a little bit later about how they can find out more about that, aren't we, Justin?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Absolutely. So 2021, Richard, this is our mortgage industry update. So Richard and I talk about what's kind of going on in the industry right now. We typically take up several slides talking about stuff and pointing out specific details of what's going on. But for today's purposes, we want to make sure that we have plenty of time for Brian, because we know that you're going to have a ton of questions. And by the way, we're going to save most of our Q&A towards the end of it, but please feel free to comment during our presentation today, during our broadcast, and ask any question you want, and we will try to get it answered at the very end. If you stay at the end, we'll definitely get those answered, but we want to get to the main part of our presentation for today.
So Justin, one thing I will mention is we've already got 4 or 5 questions. So
Perfect.
If people do have questions, get them in early because that will ensure that we'll have time to deal with yours.
Yeah. There may be times we might bring up a question or two, but for the sake of time today, we definitely want to get through as many as we can. We want to get through this presentation. Brian's got a lot of content to drill down for us. So the national delinquency rate, this is Richard and I's favorite slide because we kind of see the heartbeat of what's going on with the mortgage industry. We had noticed it ticked below 5 or 6%, last month. This month, it jumped back up a little bit for 6%. I'm not sure if this is cause for concern, Richard, but it's just a graph showing kind of what's going on with these delinquency loans. So, Richard, explain what delinquency loans are, or what falls in the delinquency rate category.
Well, technically, the industry standard is that anything that's 90 days late is called delinquent. You can have a slow pay, which means that they're 30 or 60 days late, but they're not truly delinquent until they're 90 days late.
Good explanation. That's where we are today. The green little graph there is what's averaged around this time, and the blue obviously is where we're at as a country. I believe these numbers are as good as the end of February, maybe beginning of March. So they're close to April. Not real close, but close.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this pie is a good representation of where we're at today as of March 23rd, 2021. 7 million forbearances. This green part of the pie is important because this is the loans that have been removed or expired, and they are reperforming. So 43% of these forbearances are able to get reperforming. That's a good thing. All right. The gray part of the pie, which is 14%, are the loans that have paid off. Now, Richard, why do you think we have a lot of loans that are paying off? What is going on right now?
Well, it seems to me that interest rates are at all-time low. They've been low for a long time, but they're even lower. The Fed has come out and said that they're really not alarmed regarding inflation. So they're going to keep rates low for quite a while here. So that's a lot of what's driving today's market.
So if I add those two percentages together, help me with my math here, Richard. That's about 57% of all these loans have gotten reperforming or paid off to where they're not in forbearance anymore.
Right. Pretty close.
Right. So these are all good signs, what we're pointing to. So if you hear things in the media that things are bad and everything's going to be a cluster, you fill in the blank, ... I don't see it that way. I see it as there's going to be more foreclosures and there's going to be issues, but I don't see it as being a big, large problem. I see it as we don't know yet.
Yeah, a whole lot's going to depend on how the stimulus package rolls out. I saw a very interesting article just yesterday about how some people just aren't going to be able to be saved by the stimulus because landlords are getting hammered.
Yeah.
And it's the small guy, which actually is good for us, who owns, say, 2 to 4 units or has a couple notes that will be most affected for that. So we'll see.
Brian, how many people do you think are in unemployment right now?
I mean, the recent article that I read, wasn't it? What it was around like 9.7. Was it million, billion?
Million. 9.7 million.
Hope it's not billion, but no, I did read that. But I mean, I also read another article that said jobs are on the rise. So, I mean, I really think it just, you have the good and the bad, but I think with the pandemic, it's also creating new jobs and things are evolving and companies are learning new ways of managing and adding more staff. And I mean, they're outsourcing. So I think things are headed in the right direction.
I like what you said. I also think the same way, Brian, about companies are getting more, they're getting smarter about how to add workers to the workforce, right? Not just build automation, but build automation so someone else can figure out how to build more automation, right? So, Brian, we're going to kind of jump right into the IRA stuff. Are you ready on your end? I'm going to bring up your presentation here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Controls, my friend. Let's go ahead and talk about investing, in real estate in your IRA.
Yeah, fantastic. So once again, my name is Brian. I'm with Newview Trust Company. We are located right outside of Orlando, Florida, in Longwood, Florida. So today we're going to discuss, the advantages of investing in not just notes, but alternative assets in your IRA. So before we get started, just a few other things. What Newview is, we are a custodian. We're a third-party custodian. We're not tax advisors. We don't tell you what's a good or a bad investment. It's really up to you as the client to tell us what you want to do with your money, what type of investment you want to make, but it's also your responsibility to do your own due diligence. So we're not financial advisors. We're not attorneys. We do have a wealth of knowledge that we can share with you when it comes to self-directed IRAs and how this vehicle could work to help you build your wealth. So some background on Newview. Newview has been in business since 2003, so 18 years now. And self-directed IRAs in general have been around since the 1970s, but a lot of people don't even realize or know that this exists. It's a shame. Most people think they can only invest their retirement money in the stock market, but that's false. There are so many different assets that you can invest your money in that most people don't even realize this. I want to give an example. My mom left a company about 15 years ago, and she had a great IRA there. She put it in a self-directed IRA account, but she didn't know what that was. She just knew she had to move her money somewhere. And that money sat there, didn't work, wasn't even in the stock market for over 10 years until I started working for Newview. So that's just an example of what majority of the population is doing because they don't know self-directed IRAs exist. So a few other things. Our main office, we are based out of South Dakota, but our operation and admin office is in Orlando, Florida, or Longwood, Florida. We custody $1.5 billion in client assets. So our clients are doing really well. $1.5 billion is a huge number. We have about 10,000 clients. And a few other things that I take pride in is that we're simple to do business with. We actually get graded on answering the phones. We average 98% of the time a live person on the phone. Now, if by any chance you were to get a voicemail, we guarantee we will return that call within that same business day. That's a lot of things a lot of companies can't do. I know I hate when I call somebody and I'm on hold for hours on end. Nothing frustrates me more than not being able to get a live person. So we took that feedback and we want to make sure that when you call Newview, somebody answers that phone. And we like to build relationships. This is why we're a sponsor here at Bright Path Notes. We build relationships with people just like Justin and just like Richard, because that is how you really grow businesses, by relationship building.
Absolutely. Hey, Brian, I want to ask a question.
Sure.
I see some IRA companies and they don't have the word trust after their name. And I noticed obviously that Newview has a trust after the name. And I see your number one bullet point, full service regulated public trust company. Can you kind of explain the differences and why you would want to have your account with a company that has like a trust to it?
Yeah, definitely. So there's probably about 50 third-party custodians that exist in the United States, but not all of them are trust companies. What trust companies are, it means that you've been recognized by the IRS and their regulations as a trust company. You have to hit a certain threshold to meet those requirements, which NewView has. I wouldn't want to put my money with just any custodian. I would rather put my money with a trust company because they're already reputable. So that's the best way to answer that.
You're held to a certain standard, right? You're fully regulated to where somebody is auditing you guys on a regular basis, right?
We get audited every year, and it's a good audit because we always pass, and that's why we're a trust company.
Awesome. Okay, I'm sorry. I had to ask the question. I just thought about it. So
no, that was a great question. I haven't had that question in a really long time.
Yeah,
it's okay. I got questions for you tomorrow on the webinar.
That'll work for me.
All right, so this is my favorite part right here. A lot of people know about 401ks. It's probably the most well-known type of retirement account. There are different types of accounts that you can use, and these can all be self-directed. So the most common, if you left an employer, you probably had a 401k, a 403b, a 457b, TSP, maybe a profit sharing plan. If you ever left that employer, they're like, okay, so what do you want to do with your money now? Well, usually it's pre-tax money, and it would have to be rolled over to an IRA, and that would go into a traditional IRA. That's probably the most common. 9 out of 10 times people have a traditional IRA. Sometimes if you move it to another company like, say, Fidelity or Charles Schwab, they call it a rollover IRA. Mm-hmm. It is a traditional IRA. And then the next most common type of an account would be a Roth IRA. I love Roths. Roths are one of my favorite types of accounts.
Right here. This guy does too.
Roths are pretty powerful. I mean, I'm going to give you the best example I can give you. A traditional IRA is called a tax-deferred vehicle, which that means you will pay taxes on it when you retire and you start taking those distributions after 59 and a half. Now, a Roth is a post-tax type of an account. So that means you can pay the taxes on it now, pay it on the contributions or Roth conversions, which we'll dive deeper into that in a little while. And then it can grow for you going forward tax-free. So when you are 59 and a half and you want to start taking some of that money out, you can do that without having to pay taxes. Now, some people like to argue the differences and what's better. Well, everyone's situation is different. I'm not a tax advisor, but I do believe in the Roth. I would rather make a contribution to a Roth of $10,000 to $20,000 of my own money, pay the taxes on that, or even convert some of that money from a existing pre-taxed account, and then let my money work for me for the next 10 to 20 years, which is pretty average. And most people don't really start thinking about retirement until about 40 years old. But the next 10 to 20 years, it's going to grow tax-free. To me, that is very, very powerful, not having to pay those taxes ever again on any of my returns from my investments. So some people prefer the traditional IRA route because they say, my tax bracket's high right now. I'm still employed. I'm still making money. So I'd rather pay the taxes when I'm retired, when I'm in a lower tax bracket. Everyone's situation is different. It's up to you to figure out what strategy works best for your situation, of course.
Brian, I didn't realize you could put up to $57,000 in a SEP IRA.
Oh, we haven't got to the SEPs yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna talk about the SEP and the solo together. There's a few differences, but they have high contribution limits, definitely.
Wow.
Yeah. So one other thing I wanted to mention is with the pandemic, there's a lot of people. We just talked about this. How many people are unemployed, have job loss? There's a huge amount of people out there right now that are experiencing this and going through this. That means their tax bracket is low. Right. So when your tax bracket's low, this is a great time for you to take advantage of that. Turn a bad situation into a good situation and use that money that you have from that previous employer and convert it now, because you're at a low tax bracket, to a Roth. And now you have that tax-free vehicle that you can start investing into alternative assets like mortgage notes. Genius, right? Who would have thought about that? Turn a bad situation into a good situation.
Right.
All right. So you asked about the SEP. A SEP is also known as like a self-employed pension plan. It's one of the best ways to explain it. It has high contribution limits. It's great for anyone who's self-employed and they want to put a lot of money away because they're high earners. They probably won't be able to put a contribution to a Roth because they make too much money. But the SEP allows you to put a match of up to 25% of your self-earned income, and a maximum of $57,000. And now that's only if you're under the age of 50. If you're over the age of 50, there's an additional $6,000 catch-up contribution.
Oh.
So that's a good chunk of money. If you have no IRA and no retirement account, and you're a high earner and you haven't started saving, this is very common. This is a great vehicle for you if you're self-employed.
Absolutely.
Great if you're investing in notes.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's a great amount of money right now to buy. You could probably buy a couple of notes with that amount of money.
Yeah. So there's a great reinvesting mechanism that Justin and I know about that we can tell people about at some point, where you can actually get a very high return by using proceeds just like this inside of your IRA.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'd love to learn more about that. I'm learning about notes myself. I actually recently joined a meetup group on notes. My mom has 2 notes. Remember, I told you about her IRA that she had. She didn't do anything with it. She started learning. And the most passive way of investing retirement money and not break any of those rules, which we'll go through as well, is mortgage notes. I mean, you just put your money, you lend it, and let your money work for you. It's one of the most easiest and passive ways to invest retirement money. I believe in it. So I'm going to keep going. We're going to talk about the simple IRA. That IRA is great for like small businesses. If you have a small business, a lot of people that are like doctors with a small office, attorneys, they like this plan. It has an employer match of 3%. That's mandatory for anyone that works full-time for you, over 1,000 hours a year. They would also be eligible for that simple IRA. But that's also a great way if you have a small office and say you wanted to get into notes. Everybody can open their simple IRA. They can partner together, those simple IRAs, and buy notes as a group. That's buying power right there. And you're partnering with other people. So everyone's winning right there. Everyone's buying notes. They're building their wealth, and you can rinse and repeat that over and over again. So simple IRAs are pretty cool. I don't think a lot of people take advantage of those like they should. A lot of people that do have these accounts, they keep them in those employer plans that only limit you to the stock market. But a self-directed simple IRA is a lot more powerful.
Absolutely.
So a couple other accounts that most people don't know they can self-direct, and I guarantee a lot of people listening right now have these accounts. A health savings account. If you have a high deductible health care plan, then you're eligible for a HSA, a health savings account. Now, the contributions aren't that high. If you're a single person in that plan, it's $3,500. If you have a family plan, it's $7,100. It's a little more. Now, you're like, okay, that's not a lot of money. What can I do for it? Isn't that for medical expenses? Well, it's up to you. You can partner that small health savings account with, say, your traditional IRA, or even better, your Roth IRA on a note, and it'll have a small percentage ownership in that note. But now you're building that health savings account, which is building wealth. You're also building that other IRA you partnered with. And that's really the key, is finding these other ways of partnering all these accounts together to build your wealth in a tax-deferred or a tax-free vehicle. So health savings account are great. And then say you have kids. A lot of kids, they're not working. They don't have retirement accounts, but they are eligible for education savings accounts, ESAs. Okay, yeah, it's $2,000. It's a small contribution. Grandkids, if you have grandkids, they're even eligible. You can open an account for them, start saving for their college. But by investing that money, don't rely on just that $2,000 a year that you can put in there. You want to self-direct it, build that account up. So that way, when your children, your grandchildren are ready to start college, they don't have to be stressing like I did myself when I was in college. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. I'm still paying for it. I had nothing saved for college. I was, I took loans out like crazy, and I do not suggest that for anyone. So I wish I knew about this, or my mom knew about this when I was 10 years old. Would have been great. I would have had a decent amount of money saved already.
Yeah. If we knew what we know today, if we knew back then. I like what you said about combining the accounts, Brian, because that's actually one of our strategies that we do. Is we have a couple of kids' ESA accounts, and we have a couple of Roth accounts and traditional accounts, and we do combine them. And you're right. It may look like small as individual accounts, but when you partner them with other accounts, I mean, all of a sudden you got a bigger pool of money, and okay, now you can really do some damage with it, so to speak. Go after with a more buying power. 100%.
It's all about having the buying power by combining these accounts. Now, one question I get pretty often about the health savings account is like, don't I have to cash it in every year? Don't I have to claim all my medical expenses every single year? you do have to claim them at some point, but there's not a set date that says you have to claim them annually. So if you wanted to accumulate all those medical expenses for a couple of years, save those receipts, save those invoices, save those bills, use your own cash to pay for them, well, now you've invested that health savings account. It's growing for you. Say in a couple of years down the road, you're like, you know what, I'm ready to cash this thing out. You have maybe $50,000 in that health savings account. You can pull that money out when you're ready to and claim all those expenses. That's a cool strategy. It's almost like a Roth in a way if you do it the right way.
Absolutely. That's cool.
Brian, what if you don't use those funds?
If you don't use the health savings account funds?
Yeah. So you've got money in there and your kids are gone. So you're not using it nearly as much as you would be.
That's a great question. I keep investing it. Keep working for you.
I like that.
Okay.
So I know you guys are very interested in the solo QRP. That's what we call it. It's also known as like a solo 401k or a solo K or individual K. It's got many, many names, but they all do the same thing. This is one of my favorite plans. Same thing. You must be self-employed, no common law employees. My favorite thing is the high contribution limits on this plan. So this plan, the way I describe this plan is it is a 401k plan for your self-employed business. Now, whether you're self-employed and it's just you have business partners, or it's your spouse, all of you are eligible to be participants in the solo 401k plan. Most people don't know that. They think you have to be the sole person in the plan, but that's not true. Mm-hmm. So this plan allows you to contribute $19,500, and you can designate that to be pre or post-tax money. A lot of people look at this as like, hey, this is a great way. If a Roth is wonderful, $6,000, $7,000, pay the taxes now. You could do that same thing with that $19,500 if you want to designate that to be post-tax contributions, pay the taxes on that, and let that money work for you and grow tax-free going forward. Now, you still have to be a good bookkeeper, though, and make sure you designated that to be post-tax, because most people think 401ks, you can only contribute pre-tax, but not on the employee contribution. Now, not only are you the employee of your business, you're also the employer. So with any other 401k plan, there's usually an employer match, right? Well, this employer match allows you to match up to 25% of your self-earned income. So that's a maximum combined with the employee and the employer match, or it's going to be $57,000 if you're under the age of 50. And there's an additional $6,000 if you're over the age of 50 that you can contribute to this plan. So the maximum $63,500 total that you can contribute to a solo QRP. So I'm going to continue on this plan because I get so excited about it.
It just blows my mind how they have this available. And it seems like when you're in the self-directed retirement space, you hear about it, but then until somebody really dives in and explains to you, you don't realize how powerful it is. So
seriously, I just think that some people get a little overwhelmed with how many benefits are in there. They think it's too good to be true. They think it's too complicated or too much to learn, but it's actually very, very basic. The way I explain it is like, okay, I work for New View Trust Company, right? We have a 401k plan. Every employee that's worked there, 90 days is eligible to be part of that 401k plan. Well, the government says this is what the problem, this is why this plan was created. There are so many self-employed individuals that, they save their money, but they forget to put it in a retirement account. So that's what this was created for. It was created for people that weren't saving for retirement. So then they retire or they have to work the rest of their lives. Which would you rather do? I'd rather open a solo 401k myself.
Right.
Right.
So any individuals who have like their business owners, we get so many people that are personal trainers, nutritionists, some doctors, some attorneys, mostly people that work in real estate, like real estate agents and brokers. They're self-employed. They file that, 1099 every year, and they're making that self-employed income. These are the types of people that like the solo 401k plan. Property managers too. Sometimes if you're your own property manager, you have investment property, you might be eligible for a solo QRP as well. But you want to definitely talk to your tax advisor or call myself, and we'll talk about it and see if you're eligible for that plan. It's kind of funny because there's a lot of people that aren't self-employed and they call me and they want to open one of these accounts, but they're not self-employed. They're like, well, how can I become self-employed? That's not my job to figure that part out. Right. But I can tell you what other clients are doing.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, no common law employees. That's one of the rules. You can't really have any employees or you won't be eligible for this plan. But like I said, you can have business partners as long as they own over 5% in the business. They're eligible for the solo QRP as well. And they can make those same contributions that you're making.
Brian, I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you expand on no common law employee, what that really means?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's kind of a weird wordage, the way they worded it in the IRS. But when they say common law employees, they're talking about any part-time employees, anyone that you're paying. Because the way it works is if you have a retirement plan, it's supposed to be extended to all your employees.
Mm-hmm.
But this plan is it's really designed for people that are self-employed only. So you can't have, the way I say it, you just can't have any employees. That's it. You can have business partners. You can have your spouse. They're considered part of the business. That's all. You just can't have any employees.
Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, you can have a sole proprietorship. You can have an LLC, partnership, C Corp, S Corp, any of these you can have and be eligible for the solo QRP. It doesn't matter what type of business entity you have. So I mentioned a few of the benefits, but there's just some more. There's a lot of benefits with this plan. So that's why I said I get so excited about it. So, okay, here's an example. If you bought, say, a piece of real estate in your self-directed IRA and you use some leverage, or say you invested into something like a syndication where they're using leverage, you're typically subject to what's called UDFI. It's a taxation. It can be high. It's just based on the leverage portion of your returns from your investment. So a percentage of your returns would be taxed because you couldn't have done that investment without the leverage. So if you do that same investment in a solo QRP, you're exempt from that UDFI taxation. Only plan that allows that in real estate. So that's one of my favorite perks on this. Another thing, it's the highest Roth contributions. Like I mentioned, that $19,500, that can be designated to be post-tax money. Also, there's no mandatory tax reporting until their account is $250,000. And the tax form you fill out is called a 5500 easy form. One tax form. That's all you need to fill out once the account's $250,000. Now, I always recommend anybody that does this plan to get an EIN number for the 401k plan. Okay. Most people fail to do that. The reason I suggest to do that is because once your account reaches $250,000, the IRS potentially could do an audit on you back up to 10 years. However, if you have the EIN number, then you are all set. Another reason I suggest the EIN number is because when you go to a bank, it comes with checkbook control, and that's the next point there. What checkbook control is, and I'm going to get further into that as well, it allows you to take complete control of your money instead of having it through the custodian, having the custodian say, pay this bill for me, or I want to invest my money here and I want to buy this note here. You don't have to come to the custodian. You have the money in that bank account. That's your bank account designed and open for that 401k plan. But the banks say, is this going to be a business checking account or an individual personal checking account? Well, you could open it either way, but if you have the EIN number, you can open it as a small business checking account. So that's another reason I encourage you to get the EIN. And if you have any trouble with that, it takes 5 minutes and I'm happy to walk you through that step. You can take a personal loan against this plan. So like any other 401k plan, you can borrow money from it up to $50,000. Now, it can't exceed 50% of the total value of the account. So if you only have $75,000, you can't take that full $50,000. You have to have at least $100,000 in there to take the full $50,000 out. And then you pay yourself back. You can pay yourself back with interest, not a high interest rate, but whatever the prime is, plus 1% is pretty average. But you're still paying yourself back. It's not like borrowing money from someone else.
Right.
You're borrowing money from your own 401k plan. You can also invest in both your traditional assets like stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, as well as alternative assets like your mortgage notes, tax liens, tax deeds, real estate, cryptocurrency, precious metals. I mean, the list goes on and on. All right. I know you guys have questions.
Oh, I have no questions. This was perfect explanation.
It's a lot of information. Like I said, mostly it blows people's mind when I talk about this plan.
It does.
And it's always changing. So this is an idea of what the IRA market looks like. There is almost $11 trillion in IRA money that most people don't even realize is there. And you know what the worst part of it is that 50% of it is sitting in cash and it's not even invested. It's not even working.
That's mind-boggling.
And a lot of people inherit IRAs. You know, when your relatives pass on, they leave you some money. These inherited IRAs are untapped. People don't realize that just because they inherited it, they think they can't do anything with it. You can invest that money too. You can keep that money working. You inherited that money. Do something with it. Don't leave it sitting there. But I just want to give people a big picture of how much money is really out there.
That's crazy. And then you can see in your graph there as it started with year two. Can you go back to that real quick, please?
Oh yeah.
In year 2000, and then as it's growing, and then you see when the financial crisis hit, how things changed, and you got a lot of velocity going from 15, 17, 18, 19, and then you broke it down by the quarter within 19, and then showed Q1 of 20 and Q2 of 20, how things changed. So what happened during Q1 of 20?
The CARES Act. A lot of people found out that they can take, I think it happened like was it March or was it April? Maybe it wasn't Q1, but it was Q2. The CARES Act allowed people to take up to $100,000 distributed without the 10% penalty. So a lot of people cashed out that money. Now, the smart people that did do that, they took out that money because it was tied up in that employer 401k plan. It was limited to only the stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. I had a few dozen people that instead of them taking that distribution from that 401k and keeping the money personally, they did an indirect rollover and they deposited it into a self-directed IRA. And now it was no longer limited to only the stock market. They can actually buy alternative assets that they've been learning about, but they were stuck in that employer plan.
That's awesome. Thanks for going over that.
Brian, I think a lot of people also don't realize the cost of staying in cash.
Yeah.
If you say, well, you could buy a note and get a 6% return, and you figure that inflation is running maybe 3% per year, your opportunity cost is 9%. A lot of people would love to get a 9% return on an investment.
Oh, yeah.
But they're not if they're just letting it sit in cash. So you're really better to invest as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite thing about notes, I mean, is there's collateral on the line, you know, like it's almost a win-win. You can't find if you invest your money in the stock market, you can't control that company. You can't control the decisions. All it takes is one bad comment on Twitter nowadays or Facebook to make a company's stocks drop. It's insane, isn't it?
It is.
You can't control that. But in mortgage notes, you have control of that. You know where your money is. You know what your money is working. And you know what? You know it's on the line. If they don't pay you back, you have something on collateral you can take away. Nothing else is secured like that. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of mortgage notes.
That number is astounding. The almost 11 trillion in assets at the end of the second quarter of 2020. That's incredible.
All right, let's move on. So these are the things you cannot do.
Okay.
Like it's a long list of things you can do, but these are things you cannot do. These are what the IRS guidelines are. So the things you cannot invest in are life insurance. Why life insurance? Because life insurance is meant for after you're alive. Retirement money is meant for while you're still alive. So you can't invest in life insurance, unfortunately. You can't purchase any collectibles. Can't buy artwork or antiques or coins. The reason why is because I might look at this painting here and say, you know, that painting's gorgeous. And to me, I would pay $1 million for that. But Jason might walk in and say, I wouldn't even pay $100 for that. So yeah, collectibles doesn't work. Can't do it. Not everyone agrees on the price of things. So it has to have something that has a fair market value that, like a house, an appraiser can go in and say, this house is worth this much money. So
Brian, that's because all the art you buy is paint by numbers.
So a few other things. These are what the rules are. So all your investments using a self-directed IRA, they must be passive investments. They must remain at arm's length. You cannot do transactions between yourself being the IRA owner, your spouse, your parents and grandparents, your children or your grandchildren. So your linear family tree, they are exempt. So if I wanted to lend some money to somebody, even if it was secured by real estate and I was going to get a great return on it, it cannot be one of those family members, unfortunately. Now, as long as you follow those rules and don't do transactions with those what are called disqualified parties, you are good. But I also don't recommend doing business with family members either, because there's this thing called sweetheart deals where you want to give a family member a good deal. And if they don't pay you back, you might be like, oh, well, it's okay. I understand. You sympathize. Can't do that. Don't suggest doing it. Do it with somebody that maybe does, I don't know, flips, or somebody that has a reputation, somebody that's familiar with mortgage notes. Bright Path notes would be great as well, but
Thanks for the
I will
plug.
not do a transaction.
I
with
love
them.
this guy.
So here's a few other things that you can buy. These are the most common things. Number one's real estate. Our clients love to buy real estate, buy and holds. But with real estate comes a lot of stress. If you've ever been a landlord, you've ever bought real estate or owned real estate before, it's a lot of work. It really is. You got to keep up with the expenses. That taps into your returns. You have to make sure that house is up to par. You have to, have tenants in and out. They destroy the property. They don't take care of it because it's not theirs. So there's some things that are bad with real estate versus something like mortgage notes. It's passive. You don't have to worry about keeping up with that property. Yep. You just let your money work for you. I mean, it's really cool. Now, if for some reason the borrower didn't pay you back and you had to foreclose on that property, then you own a property or you sell the note. There are so many different strategies to get out of that and still make your money. So Justin's a professional when it comes to the notes, so I'm going to let him take over on that part on the next class.
So, Brian, I will ask you one question here that I think is very interesting, and that is, so I notice in your chart, you say that you can invest in private stock, but I know if you have an account through Schwab or one of the big houses, you can invest your self-directed IRA in actual stocks. What's a differentiation there between you and them, and well, what is it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as a self-directed IRA custodian, we can't hold anything that's publicly traded. So this is like private stock. I'll give you an example. We had a bank here recently. They're actually right across the street from us, and they were opening up, and they had to raise a certain amount of money before they were able to open their doors. So what they did is they opened up private stock to all their employees, and these employees had previous employer plan, like 401ks. They moved it to a self-directed IRA, and they bought private stock in that bank. Mm-hmm. That's an example of what private stock is. Now, NewView is going to be a hybrid company pretty soon. I don't like to get ahead of myself, but we are working on a platform where clients, because this is what happens. When your money's sitting in a self-directed IRA, it does just sit in cash unless you invest the money. Now, say I was holding a mortgage note, and I'm getting my payments, my interest payments every month. That money's just sitting in cash. Well, clients don't like that, and I completely understand. So we're working on a platform where clients can have their money invested in those traditional type of assets like stocks, bonds, or mutual funds, and also still hold their alternative assets. We're working on it. It's on the institutional side now, but it's not on the retail side yet.
Okay. One of the reasons I ask about that is because, especially since I'm out here in San Francisco, you can imagine there's a lot of tech startups.
Yeah.
And I invested in a couple of those, and one of them had an IPO and went public. And I got a call from my friendly IRA group, and they said, "Hey, you got to move your stock." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "It was publicly traded." And I had no idea that was the case. So
yeah, so either. That does happen when you have something that's private stock. Eventually it goes public if they're doing well and it's a great company. That means you made a great investment. By the way, just putting that out there. Good job with that one. But on our institutional platform, now, before, if it became public, they would have to move it to another brokerage like Fidelity or Charles Schwab, Merrill Lynch, something that can hold that. But now we can actually hold them on our institutional platform. If it goes public, we can hold it. Before we couldn't do that, and just until recently we started that platform where institutional clients can hold it. There's a difference in the retail and the institutional clients. Typically, institutional are those what are you call accredited investors, and it's usually a group of people. It's like we don't even speak to the clients; we just speak with their advisors or broker dealers, and they're all going into like one big investment, like I don't know, a multifamily syndication where. I don't know, they're raising $10 million and they've got a ton of investors going in on that. So that's our institutional side.
Right.
And the retail side is where I'm at. So my clients are those individual investors. They're savvy. They like those, rental properties, those Airbnbs. They like to buy those, mortgage notes. Those are my clients on the retail side. Great. And then just a few things that are trending right now. We've been getting a huge influx of people that want to buy cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency, you saw today, I don't know if anybody noticed, if you have crypto, but it skyrocketed today. So a lot of people are really blowing up our phones wanting to buy crypto. Now, the only way we allow crypto is through checkbook control, and a lot of custodians set it up this way, and I'm going to dive deeper into checkbook control pretty soon. And then you have tax liens, tax deeds, partnerships. These are, and precious metals. A very small amount of people invest in those things that I've seen since I've been with NewView, but I know with other companies, they do have a high focus on things like tax liens and precious metals.
Cool.
So, okay, this is one of my favorite slides here because this is what the stock market really is. I have my money in the stock market right now because it's not a huge amount of money for me to do anything with yet, but it's getting there.
How dare you, Brian?
I go there.
Come on this show and you talk about putting money in the stock. How dare you?
It's just a small amount right now. I'm working on it.
Richard, we need to teach Brian a few things.
I'm terrible when it comes to that. But no, I mean, I've been putting my money away. I was only eligible for my 401k plan almost a year ago. So it's like going to a casino, you know, you're kind of testing your luck. Nobody understands it. That's how the stock market is. It's gambling. You don't know you might read an article and say, oh, Tesla's going to be doing really well this day. And you put your money in there and you kind of forget about it. And that's what happens to a lot of people. And then all of a sudden you go back and you're like, oh my God, I lost money. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's up and down. The pandemic was a great example of you can't predict the stock market. You have gurus out there. They think they know what they're saying. They make these predictions, but nothing is guaranteed. I would rather control my money with an alternative asset that I can understand and I can rinse and repeat and I know how it works rather than have my money in the stock market. Shame on me for having some of my money in there, but I plan on moving out pretty soon. All right. So compound interest. This is the power of using a retirement account versus using your own cash. So for every dollar that I have, if I doubled it, it's taxed at 25%. I would end up at $72,000. It's pretty good, right? It's not bad. That's me using just my own cash and paying the taxes like I normally would on any capital gains. Now, what do you think the outcome would be if I did it in a tax-free vehicle like a Roth? It's the same amount of money. I'm investing $2. I'm doubling it. And it's the same amount of times that I doubled it, 20 times. I'd end up with over $1 million. That is the power of really building your compound earnings using something like a Roth. That's the only vehicle that's going to grow tax-free like that. But it's a huge difference. You can see how compound earnings work. So this is a very impactful slide for me as well.
Yeah, I love that slide. You almost don't believe it until you walk through the numbers and be like, oh yeah. If you look at all the tax percentages each time you double that dollar and you realize 25% doesn't sound like a lot, but 25% when it's compounded 25% over and over and over and over again becomes like a lot of percent.
Oh yeah, exactly. That small, I mean, 25% is a high tax, but I mean, you could just see the difference. I would much rather do that in a Roth, even though it's set for retirement. It's okay. I want to retire wealthy.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
Now I know all the secrets that nobody knows by just working for NewView and networking with these like-minded investors that are doing all the things I want to be able to do. So this is what it looks like to set up your self-directed IRA. First, you have to decide what your vehicle is. Are you going to self-direct your IRA or are you eligible for that solo QRP plan we talked about? Next, are you going to be using a pre-taxed or a post-tax account if you're using a self-directed IRA? Cool thing is in the solo QRP, you get to make that same decision. So then you decide whether you want to be tax deferred or tax free. Then you tell me or me, you go work with our transactions department and say, I want to buy this asset. So we can direct you to, if you're buying a piece of real estate, you tell us when the closing date is and we send that wire out for you. Or you can set up what's called checkbook control. So checkbook control is an LLC that you create for the IRA. Instead of your money sitting in the custodial account, you open up an LLC, you open a business checking account, and now that money is moved into that checking account where you can control your own investments. You can decide, you can diversify your portfolio. You still have to follow the prohibited transactions rules and disqualified parties rules. You can't break those rules. That's the only downfall of checkbook control is there's potential to make mistakes. Can't use that money for any personal expenses. This is retirement money. This is giving you a lot of power over the money, having checkbook control. Commonly, people that have multiple mortgage notes, people that like to go to auctions, People that have multiple real estate properties like to have checkbook control because it can save them on transaction fees. But like I said, with a lot of power, what is the Spider-Man saying? With a lot of power comes a lot of responsibility. 100%.
I can answer this one. With great power becomes great responsibility.
There you go. That's the saying. I need to remember that one.
I just went to one of the museums up in Chicago over spring break, and there was a Marvel exhibit, and so my mouth dropped and the boys' mouth dropped. We're just like, we got to go there. So,
100%. I'm a huge Marvel fan. I need to go. I love all superheroes. X-Men's probably my favorite, but I'm totally going there.
Richard's
Is
going
that
like,
where you lost your marbles, Justin?
yeah, I did. I lost a few.
So in the solo QRP, it's the same thing. It actually comes with checkbook control, or you can designate NewView, being your custodian, to be your record keeper. Same thing, a lot of power there. Don't make mistakes. If you're ever unsure, call your custodian, ask questions before you make any mistakes. The worst thing you can do is make a mistake. Most things are fixable as long as you catch them in time. And then you get to have that plethora of alternative investments and that you can choose from.
When you have I'm sorry, Brian, when you have the checkbook control, is it, you have to keep, very detailed records of your transactions, right? Because you have to report that back annually to you as the custodian, and then you report that to the IRS.
Yeah. So what we need to know every year is what is the value of that LLC's worth. So whether it's in the stocks, it's in cash, it's in real estate, whatever you do with it, we need to know what the fair market value of that LLC is worth every year. Now, if for any chance you were to get an audit and they see you have checkbook control, you're going to have your bank statements that show anytime you've taken money out or put money in. Same thing with the solo 401k because it has checkbook control. So that's part of the audit process. What are you doing with the money? Where is it? Make sure you didn't break any of the rules. And that's your backup. Some people like to keep an Excel sheet. You just have to be a really good bookkeeper.
Right on. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So what to do next? Fill out an application. It's very simple. I can walk you through it. If not, somebody on my team can do that. Prepare your transfer paperwork. We make the request. If it's IRA to IRA, we will make that request for you. We make it very simple. So if your money's at Fidelity in an IRA now, we'll request whatever amount you put on that transfer form that you want to move over. Typically takes maybe 2 to 3 weeks at the most. The fastest I see is 7 to 10 business days. While we're waiting for that, you can start working on creating an LLC if you want checkbook control, or you can start going out there and figuring out what notes you want to purchase. And then that way, when the money is available, you're ready to go. And your money's not just sitting in cash when it gets to the custodial account.
That's a good point, Brian.
Yeah, for sure. So it's so worth it. The worst thing you could do is sit on cash. So if your money's not working for you, this might be the right option. And if I just figure out what's your niche, focus on it, learn about it. You might think you know it all already, but you'll be surprised how much you can still learn, especially when it comes to alternative assets. And that's it. You work with our transactions department and you make your purchase, and now you have some alternative assets in your portfolio. Now, what does it cost to wait? The longer you wait, the longer your money's sitting, the longer you're losing money in the stock market. Maybe the price of housing is going to increase, or we will see inflation. Who knows? So the best time to buy was yesterday. So you're, like I said, you're subject to that market volatility even longer. The longer you wait. What does it cost to open an account? It's only $50 to open an account. You have 2 fee schedule options. Your annual fee is either $295 per asset, or you can do it based on the value of the account. Now, anyone listening today, anyone that sees this broadcast, guess what? We are waiving that $50 application fee for you. It's only cost you $95 for the transaction to purchase that first note. And now you have your first asset. And then you have your annual fee of $295 per year. That includes all your IRS reporting that we would do for you. Now that's for the self-directed IRAs. The solo QRP plan is a $50 application fee. Same thing, it's waived if you mention that you were part of Be the Bank and that's how you heard about NewView. And it's a flat $300 a year. If you decide to do the record keeping account, that also has this same fee schedule of $50 to open it. We will waive that for you as well. So that's a $100 value if you're doing a solo QRP and designating NewView to be your custodian. If you're doing an HSA, if you're doing multiple accounts like we mentioned that you can partner together so you have more buying power, I will waive all of those $50 application fees for you because that's the best way to do it. And I really believe in what we do. And then same thing, you have an annual fee. So now I'm going to open it up to the last thing. If you want to download a free self-directed IRA e-guide, all you have to do is text 484848. You're going to text capital SDIRA. Please put your first and last name. We will send you a NewView Trust e-guide. It'll give you an idea of all types of alternative assets, some background on NewView, and background on just self-directed IRAs in general.
That's awesome.
We're going to leave this banner up here that you see going across the bottom just for a little while too, so you can catch it. If you're trying to type in a question or something right now, it'll be there for a little while.
Yeah, Brian, we had several questions popped up during the presentation. We were able to answer a few of them live there during your presentation. So thanks for answering those. And we'll definitely get ready to open up to some more questions here very soon.
Let's do it.
Brian, thank you so much for the contribution you're making to our broadcast here, and obviously waiving the fees for the application. That's huge. I know in my experience, I've had other accounts with different IRA companies, and you guys are very reasonable with your fees. And like you said before, your phone call pickup rate, if you will, is outstanding. I've never had a time where I've called NewView Trust and you guys haven't picked up the phone and talked to a live person. So it's awesome. I'm glad we ran into you and connected, and we truly appreciate you guys being a sponsor.
No, thank you so much for having us. I mean, we're happy to sponsor. We believe in what you do, and building relationships is the name of the game, honestly.
Yeah. I noticed how you talked about the fees a little bit ago on the transaction and like the annual fees and stuff. Guys, right now is a great time to be lending on real estate. And when you lend on real estate and create a note, guys, you can include fees in there because you're the bank. You make the rules, right? You can include the fees that you get charged for doing things and then put them on the borrower's HUD statement when you close these deals. So you don't have to pay these fees out of your IRA. You can have the borrower take care of some of these fees for you as well. So your closing costs or operational costs could be next to nothing. In fact, you can probably charge a little bit more. Do banks do this? I mean, yeah, they charge quite a bit of money to close deals, don't they, Richard?
They certainly do.
Yeah. So don't be afraid to do that and leverage that tactic. So like you said, we'll leave that banner up there. Brian, your email address, can you read that off, please?
Yeah. So the best way to reach me is probably my email is B for Brian, and my last name is Martinez, MARTINEZ, at newviewira.com. NewView is spelled NUVIEWIRA.com.
Awesome.
Great. That was a great presentation. Thanks very much, Brian.
Absolutely. We're not done just yet. We're going to finish the main part of our broadcast here, but stay tuned for more because we will get to have a live Q&A with Brian and Richard and myself here in just a little bit. So we're going to finish up the topics for today. Brian, we're going to switch this back over to me. And
so I will ask people to, if they have any questions, please submit them now. So we have them in the queue.
Yeah, thank you. We do have several I know we're going to talk about as soon as we jump off here. Constant cash flow. This is a course that we are getting ready to come up with. Actually, Richard, my buddy here, is also one of the educators during this constant cash flow course that we're going to have. Stay tuned in the very early summer, probably the early June time period is when we're going to be releasing this video course. We're going to be talking about investing in real estate notes and being the bank and kind of the fundamentals, the foundation really of note investing so you can understand it at a very basic level. And when you get done with our videos, you're going to know what you're talking about. Okay. We got very in-depth videos. So the next meetup is May 12th. That is a Wednesday, May 12th, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern time. Don't forget to follow Bright Path Notes on social media. We got a Facebook, a Twitter, and Instagram account. You can look at me on LinkedIn. And if any Clubhouse people are out there, I'm on Clubhouse at Justin Bogard. Come follow me, invite me to a room. I'd love to talk about things. Speaking of Clubhouse, it's kind of like a networking chat group. So those of you that are listening to this replay or watching this live right now, if you would like to virtually connect with anyone that's watching this replay or connect in real time with anyone watching this, we have a way to do that in the future. I just need to get some feedback if people are interested in doing that. So make a comment in the comment section of this replay or the live broadcast that you are interested in networking with other people on this broadcast that we do. And I can set that up for you in the future. So I'm Justin Bogard. My email address is justin@brightpathnotes.com. Richard?
I'm Richard Thornton. I can be reached at richard@amnotecap.com. That's for American Note Capital.
Awesome. All right. So that is the main part of our broadcast is done. We're going to step away for just a quick 40 seconds, and we'll be right back on for some live Q&A with Brian. So we thank you very much. I want to say welcome. We thank you very much for watching this broadcast, and we're going to be right back here in just a minute. Hey guys,
we're back.
Everybody, thank you for staying on. This is the live Q&A. Richard, why don't you cue up the first question we got going?
All right, I will preface this by saying we did answer a number of the questions in Brian's excellent presentation, but here's one from Michael. Can you explain more on partnering the HSA and the 401k?
Yeah, for sure. So no matter if it's an IRA, a 401k, HSA, ESA, if you're going in on an investment, you're going to have to figure out what the percentage ownerships are in that note or that piece of real estate. Each one of those entities, those vehicles would have a percentage. So if my HSA has $10,000, this note's worth $100,000. My IRA has, or my solo 401k has $90,000 in it. Well, then my HSA owns 10%. My 401k or IRA owns 90%. So it's going to be a percentage ownership, and then the returns would come back that same percentage.
Okay. So there's no conflict there?
No, it can become conflict in real estate sometimes because I'll give you an example. Say I bought a house, it needs a new roof. I used all my money in my HSA and all my money in my IRA, and I have no money left. Well, or I have more money in my IRA than I have left in my HSA, and it's not enough to cover the percentage ownership in that HSA has to cover that roof. Well, now I'm kind of in a bad spot because no matter how you designate those percentages, it is set in stone and you cannot change it. That's my favorite part about notes. The percentages don't need to change. There's no repairs. There's no additional expenses on top of that. And it's very reasonable to do something like partnering in a note.
Cool.
That's a good point.
Michael also wants to know, do either accounts have an RMD?
Yeah, required minimum distributions. They just upped it. It used to be 70.5, so now it's 72 years old. RMDs are required for everything except for a Roth.
Except for a Roth, is that what you said?
Yeah, a Roth does not have RMDs, but your beneficiaries, if you pass on and your beneficiaries inherit that, then they would have the RMDs. They would have to be distributed over 10 years.
So why isn't there an RMD for a Roth? That's interesting.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's another great reason why having a Roth. You can keep that money working for you. You don't have to take the distributions if you don't need them. That's what makes that type of account unique.
I guess the federal government's saying, hey, look, we've already taxed it. We can't get the benefit of being taxed, so we don't need to collect it and we don't care. Is a Roth when it's passed on to your heirs? Because it's largely a lot of what I'm doing right now is I'm setting up accounts for my kids and doing deals inside their accounts. Is a Roth passed to them tax-free also, so they don't have to pay taxes on it either?
So they can keep investing in it, would keep growing tax-free. But it is, they would still be able to take those distributions tax-free, but they do have to take them within 10 years after inheriting it.
Okay, because there are restrictions on an inherited IRA, correct?
There are, yeah. That's what the rules would be, is you have to take the distributions. And has to be distributed. Now, this is a new rule. It just happened, and I hope it changes. But I mean, 10 years is a short amount of time to have to take all, if you really built that Roth up, I mean, the person's going to be happy taking all that money, I'm sure, but it's a short amount of time to be able to have to take all that money as a distribution when it could still keep, being invested longer.
Right. So, I mean, what's interesting, if you play with the numbers just a little bit, what is that minimum distribution? Is it a percentage of the account?
It's not a percentage. There's a lot of factors that come into play, like the previous owner's life expectancy. There's the person's income, their tax bracket. There's a lot of things. There's a calculator actually that we have where you can put in answer all the questions, put the numbers in, and it'll tell you what that RMD looks like.
The reason I placed the question is because a friend of mine has an inherited account, IRA account like that from her father. And what she's found is that the RMD, the return, the actual, what she has to take out is far less than the money that's being made in the account. So even though she's taking money out, it's still growing at like 10% per year, which is pretty fantastic if you think about.
Yeah, she's doing the right things. Or did she inherit assets along with it that were working?
Yes.
Oh, that's why. Okay, so whoever she inherited from was a good investor, and they made some good choices. So that way, their kids are going to retire wealthy as well, or they're going to live wealthy while they're taking those distributions.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have any more questions. There are no more questions on the board. Let's see. Oh, yes, there is. There's one more from Michael. Do either accounts have an RMD?
Yeah, that was the.
That we just answered that one.
Asked.
Yeah. Good. All right. Oops, no, one more's coming in here. Let's see. Goodwin says, what happens if the inherited Roth has assets, a note, for example, extending beyond the 10-year distribution period?
That is a very good question. I am not a CPA, unfortunately, so I don't have an answer for that. I've never been asked that because, like I said, this is a pretty new rule. It started last year. I hope it changes because there was never RMDs before for Roth. So let me see. What happens if an inherited Roth has assets like a note and it extends beyond the 10-year distribution period? You would have to sell the note, I would think.
Right.
Yeah.
You just have to liquidate
Mm-hmm.
and then reinvest it, right?
Yeah.
I was going to say, either Justin and I would be glad to buy it. From it could be put back into your IRA.
Yes, right. Put it in a different IRA, right?
Yeah.
Good question, though.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you can't buy it from yourself. That would be nice, from your own IRA.
But
can't do it.
So I mean, I don't want to split hairs here, but could you sell it to your wife?
Nope, she's disqualified.
Your brother or sister?
Brothers, sisters, yeah. Brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces.
Why is that not disqualified? But it just seems funny how the brother and sisters aren't disqualified, but your parents, grandparents, and kids are. You would think it'd be in the same situation, right?
I hope it stays that way and it doesn't change because, I mean, I don't know the reasoning behind why those are disqualified parties, your ascendants and descendants. The only thing I can imagine is because, say you did own a piece of real estate and one of those disqualified parties was living on the property and then something happens and they inherit it. Well, now they're the owner of the IRA and they're living on that real estate that's owned in the IRA, which is prohibited. So I'm thinking that might be the reason, but I really don't know.
If it's a big enough distribution, I can get divorced. I'm not above it. Why not?
Richard. I like what you brought up earlier. We talked about a couple of times, like the commingling of different accounts, whether they're other, like, I don't know if we talked about this specifically, but one of the things I've heard you say, Brian, before is having your IRA lend to another IRA, right? So they're not people that are disqualified to each other. Just IRAs lending to another IRA. Is one of those accounts you can do that, or am I not understanding that correctly?
They're not lending to the other IRA. That's a great question. It would be partnering, but so you're saying like, okay, so
yeah, I would think it's just partnering.
So say you have, I don't know, say you have, we're not related, we're not disqualified. and I say I'm buying a piece of real estate, but I'm short, I don't know, $25,000.
Yeah.
Could you lend your IRA as a note to the real estate I'm buying in my IRA? So the only type of leverage you can use with an IRA is called a non-recourse loan.
Mm-hmm.
So if the note's non-recourse, I guess that would be okay. But typically we use non-recourse lenders, which note investors are lenders. So it could work, I think. But that's a good question. I don't know a definitive answer to that one, though. That's a tough one. I'll find out.
It'd be great if a bunch of people that had IRA retirement accounts that are looking to lend on projects or whatever situations, if they all were trying to help each other out and be like, hey, I'm looking for, like you said, I need $9,000 to fix this issue over here. And then, you have a payback with it. So just, I can see it working that way with a group of people that are not disqualified.
Brian, something that's worth mentioning here, I think also is that I know a number of people have invested in hard money loans with their IRA funds. Mm-hmm. And in some instances, it's not happening so much yet, but to the degree that though the borrowers default on those notes or those hard money loans, Justin and I have some very good ways to help people note out of them and basically get their money back. It's over a little bit longer period, but it's some very creative financing ways, and you can do that inside your IRA. So if anybody would be interested in something like that, please give either Justin or I a call. And it's a win-win. It helps them, it helps you in their IRA, and it helps them, it helps their borrower also.
Wow, that's really cool that you guys are doing. That's a cool strategy. That's the first time I've heard this.
Yeah, it's a type of creative finance, and not a lot of people are doing it. But yes, we can offer those services.
That's awesome. That's a good way to give back.
Mm-hmm. That's all the comments we have for right now. Justin, got anything else?
Words of wisdom, things to live by. Don't eat yellow snow, even though it's not snowing right now. That's what my dad always tell me.
My words of wisdom would be start saving. If you're getting to your, mid 30s where I'm at, and you don't have a retirement account, you should really start saving now, especially if you have children that are eventually, going to be inheriting this account. Start saving. You should have started saving probably yesterday. Right. But everyone always says, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. Don't procrastinate it. And, look into self-directed IRAs. This, like I said, this has been around since the 70s. And it's one of those things that only the top 2% of wealthy people are using and know about. And they don't care to share that information. But I'm sharing it with you today.
Yeah, even if you got a few dollars to your name, just open the account and just slowly get it going. Use your W-2 money, your income, and just keep feeding the account. I think one of the best things about a small balance IRA, let's say under $10,000, is you can really maximize that thing and have a lot of velocity quickly. No, you probably can't buy a big note with it, obviously, with $10,000. But what you can do is you can lend on it. And then guess what? You keep contributing to the account, right? You're just fueling that fire. And then after a year or so, you've already doubled the account pretty much when you accrue all your interest back. And you make that is it $6,500 or is it $5,500? What is it now for the IRA Roth?
For the Roth, $6,000 if you're under the age 50, $7,000 if you're over 50.
Okay. Yeah, $6,000. I mean, just imagine that. You went from having $10,000, collect all the interest on a loan that you have, and then add another $6,000 to that. So you probably have another $18,000 after 12 months. I mean, that's a huge growth and not really doing anything, right? Just imagine doing that over and over and over and over again. That's the small balance IRA theory on how you can grow it. Give out small loans. That
compound interest, it'll add up.
Yeah, Brian, an associate of Justin's and mine, says quite often that investing in notes is not necessarily a way to get rich quick. But it's a great way to get rich slowly. And I think, using your IRA monies to do that is a great way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. It's patient money, but you know what? You'll get rich eventually, and it's retirement money. You don't need it now. You need it for when you retire anyways. Just take your time, learn about it, do it. And there's opportunity out there if you're networking with the right people. Find the right borrowers, find the right notes, I mean, you have a lot of power with notes. I mean, a lot of times you can negotiate what the terms look like.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
That sounds great.
All right, guys. Well, Brian, thanks again for coming on today. Great presentation. Richard, as always, thanks for being a part of the broadcast here. And
Always glad to help.
we appreciate it, Richard. You got some great feedback for us. So May 12th, I think it was May 12th. Oh yeah, it is May 12th. I got them on the screen here. At 6 p.m. is our next meetup. We'll go live on YouTube and Facebook. And until then, guys, have a good one. We'll see y'all next time.
All right.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Richard.
Bye. You too.